Sweet. Awesome. Well, it is three past, so we'll go ahead and jump in. If this is your first ever climate career advancement session, welcome. Climate People and MCJ host these sessions. Oh, you can see my dog. Climate People and MCJ host these sessions every month with the sole goal of giving all of you the tools that you need to succeed in the climate focused job search and hopefully apply these tools and get a job so that we can get more people working in this space. If we have not met before, hi, my name is Natalie Lavery, head of marketing for Climate People. Climate People is a climate recruitment agency. So essentially, doing what we just said, trying to give all of you more of those tools to get more people working in climate solutions. I'm so excited for today's session. Today's session, we have Gaurav Valani. Valani, did I say that right? Valani?
Yeah,
Oh, awesome. Join us to talk about offers and negotiations and how you can sell your background and your skill set to get the best offers. I will let him introduce himself a little bit further, but I just know I'm so excited for the session. We've collaborated a few times in the past, and every time we co-host something, I walk away learning so much, and I just am always so impressed by how much value you can deliver in a short amount of time. So I'll hand it over to you, and yeah, we can go from there.
awesome. Thank you. And thank you guys for having me. Um, I know we don't have that much time. It's only less than an hour now. So I'm not going to spend too much time. I'm not going to spend any time talking about myself. If you can follow me on LinkedIn and then hopefully you'll learn who I am, what I do. But quick intro is I founded a company called Career Sprout, which is a career coaching company that helps professionals land high paying job offers. So today's topic is negotiation. And everything we're going to talk about is literally what we teach to our clients. And so I'm excited to share that with you. And you guys this is going to be sent to everyone, right? Okay,
Yep.
cool. So if I go through the slides kind of quickly, I apologize, but I want to make sure that we get through everything because there's a good amount that we're going to cover. And then in addition to this recording that you'll get, I think Natalie's also going to send over another resource which kind of breaks down how to navigate the entire job search process. So you guys will all get that too. So we can just dive in and I can share my screen. And I say this literally before every workshop that I do. Um, do not judge me based on my slides because I think like a 5-year-old could create these slides. And every now and then I have been told that there's watermarks on my slides. And that's also because I don't want to pay the $11 to Canva to go to the pro version. So I just keep it for free. So I apologize about my slides, but don't judge me on the slides. So here, I'm gonna start sharing and then we can just dive into it. And we are going to try to save as much time as we can on the back end for Q&A as well. All right, so how to negotiate salaries and job offers. And that's what we're talking about today. So today, my goal is to teach you guys how to get results like these. These are I just snapshotted a few of, what our clients have done throughout the years. And then I also made sure to include what's happened recently, because I want you to know that not only does this work in a down market, it also works well, not only does it work in a good market, it works in a very competitive down market. I hate to say the word down, but it is kind of, down-ish right now. These didn't show. See, I told you not to judge me on that. But anyway, so I want you to learn how to get these types of offers. So let's start with the 6 things you need to know about negotiating your job offer before we talk about how we're going to negotiate it. So the very first thing I think is really important for everyone to know is that negotiating has doesn't only you don't only have to negotiate your base salary. We want to make sure that when an offer comes and when we're considering offers and when we're considering job opportunities, we're looking at the big picture here. And so the total comp has so much that we want to consider when looking at an opportunity. And that should be these are some of the things that should factor into your decision, right? So sometimes when we get a job offer, we'll find that it's not as high as it can be or high as we want it to be. But sometimes people will say, "Oh my God, I could have got 160, but they're only offering 150." And I always tell them that that extra 10K, if you really divide it out over 52 weeks, does not make much of a difference, especially after taxes are considered. But what does make a difference is, does this opportunity allow you to put you in a situation where you're going to get a lot of mentorship? Are you going to learn? Are you going to have work-life harmony or balance? Do you get all these other things like bonus, equity, stock options? How's the culture? How's your leader, the person that's you're going to work with and learn from day in, day out? Because that leader can make or break your career. And that's worth more than anything, I think. So we want to make sure we're looking at the big picture. And one of the things I always say when we're talking to our clients is, if you're earlier in your career, you want to make sure you're putting more weight on learning than earning. And then as you're sort of growing through your career, then you want to put more weight on earning over learning. But in any situation, if you can earn and learn, oh, that's just golden. Those are out there. There's a plethora of those types of opportunities out there. So make sure when you're looking at a job offer, you're considering culture, mentorship. Is it something you can leverage to get a better title, a better pay 1 year, 2 years, 3 years from now? So big picture, right? When in doubt, zoom out. That's what we always say. So that's number one. Number two, I see this all the time. People getting offended when they've been, lowballed. And I got to tell you, it's not about you winning and them losing. It's just making sure you're finding a win-win. And I know, like, the salary we earn essentially makes or breaks our livelihood. But try your best not to take this personal, or don't make it personal. Remove the emotions out of the equation, because you have to understand that all companies are going to always do what's best for them, and you will do what's best for you. But what's best for them is trying to get you to come in. They're trying to get a discount just as much as you're trying to get a premium. So we'll have to find ways to make it a win-win situation. But again, it's never personal. It's always business. So try not to try to get them to feel like, like, don't feel like you're trying to pull a fast one over this company or something like that, because you don't want to go into a new job with any sort of angst or feeling of ill will. So that's the second point. The third thing, which should have been third instead of four and five, is I see this all the time. We never want to negotiate based on our current salary. So think of this. A lot of times when somebody enters the job search, it's usually from a place of like negativity. They've been laid off, they feel undervalued, they feel like the culture sucks, they don't feel respected, whatever, right? So when we start looking for a new job, we feel like our value is at an all-time low. And so when we start looking at opportunities out in the world, we will factor what we just did and what we just made as the point of leverage. But you don't want to do that, because that's the fastest way to keep you stuck and keep you sort of at the same level over and over and over again. So instead, we want to negotiate based on our current value and our future value. And so the example that I use here is similar to like when we buy or sell a home. And even if you've never bought or sold a home, you know sort of what the process looks like. So think of it like this. Let's say all of you here bought a home 5 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever, right? And let's say, I'm just going to throw a random number out there. Let's say that home was $500,000. Well, if you decided to sell that home today, you wouldn't just say, well, since I bought it for 500,000, I'm cool at selling it for 700,000 because that seems cool. No, what you would normally do is hire an appraiser, and this person would come in and check the conditions of your home. What upgrades have you made? What are the other homes in the neighborhood selling for? Are the schools there good? What improvements did you do? Whatever, right? And then they would make this, they would factor in all of these things and they'd come back to you and they'd say, hey, your home is worth 1.5 million. Well, that's good, right? Because now you know what to go to market, how to go to market, how to list your home, what's a good fair market value to get for it, and all the things. It's very similar when we start our job search too, because if you think about, let's say you were working in your last role for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. Well, I guarantee you over that 1 to 3 years or 5 years, whatever, you've learned new things, you've developed new skills, you've worked on things that have made you stronger, better, smarter, whatever, more effective. And your value now has gone up. And so it's similar to doing an appraisal on your home before you sell it. You want to do an appraisal on your career before you go into the job market. And the other thing that I think is super cool to know here is, let's take that same home. If you bought that 5 years ago for $500,000, even if you did nothing to that home is still worth more now, right? Because the market has just improved. Well, even if you didn't learn a single thing, which I think is ridiculous to think, even if you added no new skills, your title, your skill set is actually worth more in the open market. So when we start the job search, we want to make sure we are factoring in our entire skill set. What did we learn? How much does the market pay now for my skills? What new skills have I developed? What new accomplishments can I talk about? Because other companies are going to place a premium on that. So it's a very similar concept. And so every single time we take on a new client, we do an appraisal on their career first. We call it a career audit. We don't call it an appraisal, but same thing. And we look at, tell me what you did. Tell me how you've done it. Did you develop new skills? Did you gain new certifications? What projects did you work on? How did they impact the business? And then we go to sites like salary.com, PayScale, Glassdoor, and we look at the different roles that they're considering or should be considering, and we show them how much they're worth now. So that way, when they enter the job search, when they talk to recruiters, when they start talking to companies, they know what to be asking for. They know what their value is. So like when we look at salary.com and all of those things, you want to make sure you're looking at your title based on your experience now. You want to make sure that we're factoring in the location. If you're looking at, if it's non-remote type jobs, the size of the companies you're targeting, the type of companies you're targeting, are they in ed tech, climate tech, whatever, and then the industry. Here's a little hack though, that I'll tell you today. If you, let's just say hypothetically, you've been doing project management for 3 years, right? And now you're going to look for a new job. I would advise you to just look at the title one level above your most recent title. So if you're a project manager, look at senior project manager. If you're a senior project manager, look at a principal project manager or lead project manager. And the reason I say that is because if you've been doing your job for 2.5, 3 years, 5 years, I can almost guarantee rather that you are now ready to level up. Don't let the title stop you from going after the title that you deserve to be at. Like your most current title has nothing to do with your current skills, if that makes sense. And the way to kind of like drive this point home is, and we do this with our clients too, is taking that same example for a senior project manager or a project manager. We'll actually show them senior project manager job descriptions. And we will literally read them line by line. And we'll see what they're asking for in these job descriptions. And then when you're reading these job descriptions, I'm again almost certain that you will be like, oh yeah, of course I did that. Of course I did that. Of course I did that. Or that's similar to what I just did here. And so that should be your indicator that what you do, or sorry, what you should target is the next level up. So we don't want to bake, again, going back to this one, never negotiate or look at roles based on your current title or based on your current salary. Look at roles based on your current value, and you determine your value by doing this sort of like appraisal or audit. And if we have questions on this, just let me know, and I'll make sure I address them once this is all done. So next time a recruiter talks to you, if you've done an appraisal, right? So let's go back right here. If you looked at salary.com, Glassdoor, PayScale, and you realize like, okay, the roles I should be targeting now are offering between, let's just say, what's this number I have here? 187 to 215. Okay. Let's say that's the research you came up with. Every single time you start the job search, you're going to talk to a recruiter. Remember how I said point number 2, which it's like negotiation starts at the beginning of the process, not at the end when you get the offer letter. You're almost always going to start the job search talking to some sort of recruiter or person from HR. And on that same call, they're going to ask you, hey, Katie, what's your salary expectations? What's your salary range? What are you looking for from a salary perspective? And if we haven't done our research, we could easily make the mistake of lowballing ourselves. So when we do the research and we know the numbers or we know the range, then the way we express what we're looking for is we don't just say, well, I'm looking for 185, because it's easy for the recruiter or that HR person to be like, well, it only pays 180. And now you're like, okay, well, then I'll take 180. And then they can be like, well, if they were willing to go 5K lower, when we offer them the position, we can even go 10K lower. They'll probably take that too. So instead, we want to come across as a savvy shopper. So this is the script that we tell our clients to use every single time they talk to a recruiter. And if you notice, we don't even mention the salary in the beginning. We just say, hey, listen, I'm happy to share what I'm looking for. Salary is not my number one motivator by any means. Rather, I'm more excited about finding an opportunity that allows me to play to my strengths by leveraging what I've been fortunate to learn and accomplish throughout the years. I'm also excited about working with other talented people whom I can learn from too, in a culture that's supportive and being able to work on something that aligns with my values and my interests. So we let them know like, hey, I'm not just about the numbers here. But then you subtly throw in the numbers and you say, but that being said, in full transparency, the roles that I'm currently being considered for or interviewing for, if you're interviewing, are offering between 187 to 215. And that's a range I'm super comfortable with, but I'm happy to be flexible based on the total comp. And then ask them, what can you share about the compensation package? And when people will say to me, what if I'm not being considered for any roles? Well, if you've applied to a job, you're being considered for a role. So that's all that matters here. Okay. So that's what I mean when I say I'm being considered for. Until until they reject you, you're being considered. And so this range that you get here, I just threw out random numbers, but this range that you get here comes from the research that you did here first. So before you ever talk to a recruiter, make sure you're doing all of this research so that way, again, you come across as a savvy shopper. Now, a lot of times, what will happen is you're sitting on your sofa and you'll get a phone call and it will be a recruiter. And that recruiter will say, hey, Katie, you applied to this product manager role and I wanted to chat with you about that. Well, you might not be ready for that one, right? So just because in that call, they will ask you rather about your salary expectations, right? So we don't want to get thrown off guard. So just say, oh, great. Can you actually remind me what this company was again? They'll say, yeah, here you go. And then just say, great, can I call you back in 5 minutes, please? I was just, I wasn't ready for this call. And they'll say, sure. And then in that 5 minutes, just make sure you quickly go back to Glassdoor, LinkedIn, PayScale, anything, and look at that company size, look at that company, the industry it's in, whatever, and make sure that you're getting a good salary range for that type of role. And the cool thing about Glassdoor is they have data on what that type of position pays at that type of company size. So then that way, when you get back on a call with them, you can use this script. So this way we don't get thrown off guard and accidentally lowball ourselves. So that's all. Oh, 3 tips. So when we do provide a range, always provide a specific number. Because if you just say 150 to 160, that seems like you're just guessing. But when you say the roles I'm being considered for are between 187.5 and 215, now you sound like you actually did your research, because 187.5 seems super duper specific, doesn't it? You could say 187.596 cents if you want, and that'll come super specific. Just kidding, you don't have to say the cents. But anyway, you want to make sure you give a specific number. And then the other thing I'd say is make that low point, that 187.5. And again, this is just random numbers I'm giving you, but make the lower end slightly higher than the lowest salary you're actually willing to take. That way, if they did give you the 187.5, it's still higher than what you are willing to take. And then make the higher one, like this 215, that should be slightly higher than their range, if you know that number. Otherwise, just go off the research that you know. And then this one, point number 3, act like you've been here before. And if you don't know what I mean by that, it's when you say this number, try to say it as confident as you possibly can. Because if you're like, yeah, I think 187 would be good. Yeah. But also maybe 183 would be good. But I'm also down open to go to 100K, whatever. I know that was an extreme range, but you want to sound like this is nothing to you. So say it with confidence. Yeah, like the roles I'm being considered for right now are offering between 187.5 and 215, and that's a range I'm super comfortable with, but happy to be flexible based on total comp. What can you tell me about this? Confidence matters here when we're talking numbers, because they'll sense it. They can sense desperation. A lot of recruiters are trained to sense desperation, by the way. So they can sense this stuff, and we don't want to come across desperate. We don't want to come across unsure of ourselves. We want to make sure that we know what our value is, and we want to stick to that. And again, you deserve it, right? You've worked your butts off to get here. Get what you're paid, get paid what you're worth. Okay. I think that covers everything we need to know about negotiation. And so now I'm going to talk to you about how do we actually negotiate once the offer comes. And that's something that we use called the Chinese menu philosophy. Katie, you know about this. So let me first tell you what this is. So the Chinese menu philosophy is not something I made up. It's something that I was taught. And it's a super, super cool and effective strategy. And it actually works 97% of the time in our program. So think of it like this. When you go to a restaurant, right? What happens? They seat you and then they give you a menu. And then you think you have all the free will in the world to pick and choose whatever you want, right? But really, you're just picking from the options they gave you in the first place. So how much free will do we have? Not much. We're just tricked into thinking we have that when we go to a restaurant. So when we get an offer, what we're not going to do is just say, oh, I don't want 150, I want 160. No, we're not doing that, because if they say, sorry, we can't do 160, you're going to say, oh, okay, how about 155? They're like, sorry, we can't do that. You're like, well, how about 150? You're just negotiating yourself lower and lower and lower, right? So instead, we're going to use a Chinese menu philosophy, and we're going to give them options that we would consider. And so here's how that works. So if you have to negotiate, right? Let's say there's something missing, or you feel like they're lowballing you in some component, we're going to go back to them with options. And we recommend at least 2, but ideally 3 options to give them. So option number 1, if it was the 187, if it was 187.5 and 215, right? Option number one is the highest salary we're going to ask for, almost knowing that they're not going to give us that. But think of it like this. It's called anchoring. We're going to anchor with the highest price so that everything after that to them looks like a discount. So then option number two is, well, then slightly lower salary. How about 200? But then something else that we want that gets increased, more vacation, more like a sign-on bonus, a higher bonus, more stock options, etc. And then option three would be the lowest salary. So instead of 200, we would say maybe 190 with a 10K or 15K sign on, and then maybe a higher title or something like that. So if it was a manager, you can ask for a senior manager. And I like higher titles too, because the next time you go to look for a new job, you're now negotiating from a senior manager instead of a manager. And the next company will have no idea how much you made at this previous company. So we always want to give them 2 to 3, ideally 3 options. And this way, what they're going to think is that the ball is in their court. But what's really happening is they're just picking from the options you gave them anyway. And now it's just, if we do this, it's a matter of, well, how are we going to do this? And when we share this, we always say, put it in writing rather than saying it over the phone initially. And when we say it to them in writing, we want to justify why we're asking for what we're asking for. And so we kind of tell them a little bit about our value. We tell them about our past accomplishments and how it aligns with what they need. We're going to make sure it's data driven. And then we're going to not sound arrogant, and we're going to sound super respectful. So next, I'm going to show you the exact script you're going to send them. And this script is the one that works 97% of the time. Okay, so here we go. So here's an example of a client who got a job at TikTok. This is what they gave him: 140 base, 25% bonus, 425 RSUs, which came out to, I think, 20K at that time. And then 15 days PTO, 7 sick days, 8 company holidays, whatever. Okay. We did the research, and then here's what we came back with using the Chinese menu philosophy. This is the exact script literally our clients send every single freaking time, and it just converts so well. You can screenshot this, or again, you guys will get this anyway. So I'm going to read it and just kind of break it down by component. So first we say, thank you for the offer. Super grateful. And I look forward to potentially working with the team. This word potential tells the recruiter you haven't made your decision yet. So now we give them a little reason to worry. After reviewing the offer and the benefits, etc., I want to be fully transparent about the numbers. Now we give them data. So first, it's being respectful. Second is data. Based on the research that I did for this role, using Glassdoor, PayScale comparably, and factoring in my background and how my experience, along with my achievements, are very much aligned with what is being required here, I found that a more comparable salary range would be, and remember, specific numbers. I just like using odd numbers, by the way, is this. Lastly, the other 2 roles that I'm in the final stages with, and in this case, he was in the final 2 stages. But again, if you're just being considered, you would just replace this with saying, lastly, the 2 other roles that I'm being considered for are offering between or have starting salaries of, and say this. Now, remember, they gave him what? 140, right? So we don't expect them to get to 160. So based on these numbers, I think we're just a little far off, or a little off from my expectations. And then we don't sound arrogant. We go back to being respectful and grateful. I would like to respectfully ask if there's any flexibility to close the gap. Would you consider one of the following options? 160, knowing they're not getting there. We knew that. Or 155 with a 30% bonus instead of a 25% bonus here. and 25K in RSUs instead of 20K in RSUs, right? Or the last one, 150 with a 35% average bonus and 30K in RSUs. And then we give them a glimmer of hope. I'm extremely optimistic about this opportunity. It's still my number one choice and happy to discuss further. And why do we want to put it in writing? One, we don't want anything lost in translation. And two, you're likely getting this offer from somebody in HR or recruiting, and they don't have any sort of say in what they can actually offer you. They have to get it all approved. They're going to literally forward this email to the hiring manager. And we want the hiring manager to see everything the recruiter sees before making their decision. And then what they came back with is they gave him the option. They said, you choose. We'll give you 160 and this much RSUs, or 155 and this many more RSUs. Both came out to the same total comp. And if that's the case, depending on how much confidence you have in the company, I would always take the 5K less and take way more RSUs, because this can be life-changing. This 5K difference is not life-changing. So he took the 155, and he plans on crushing the bonus, whatever. 63% salary increase. If you look at this was another client. He was initially offered 190 base, 190 stocks. And he got, instead, using the Chinese menu philosophy, 220K base and 300K in stocks, with a little 15K sign-on bonus as a cherry on top. Think of it like this. Why didn't they just offer him the 220K base and 300K stocks to begin with? Because they didn't know if he's a savvy shopper or not, right? So we want to make sure we know what we're doing, and we will know what we're doing if we research correctly. And so that, it ended up increasing his total comp by $155,000. And I know, I want to say something here, which is, I know it's not just about the dollar bills. However, I do believe you should always get paid what you're worth. And it goes back to, you've worked really hard to get here, and it's like you deserve to be here. You deserve to get this. And on top of that, for somebody like this, how much does 155 change your life? Right? How much more can you save? How much more can you invest? How much more can you provide for your family or your loved ones or whatever? And so you're not just doing this for you and for vanity reasons. You're doing this for something much bigger than yourself. And every time we do this, we get these types of results. They come back with these crazy numbers, 175 per hour instead of 100 per hour or whatever. This new base was a 36% increase just in her base alone. So anyway, that was essentially how we negotiate, what to think about when we're negotiating. And I'm happy to open it up for Q&A as well. So I'll stop sharing here. So let me know if that was helpful or what questions you have, and I'm happy to answer them.
Yeah, that was super helpful. There was a few questions that came in the chat while you were chatting. I'll read those off for you now. We can start with that. And then if anyone else has questions, feel free to raise your hand. We can call on you, or you can drop them in the chat and we can read them off from there, whatever is easiest for all of y'all. Cool. Let me find that one question. Corey says, the challenge with this is that so many recruiters ask this question really early on in the process. Even for senior level jobs, it feels like it's coming up a lot. So like they're asking people, what salary do you currently have? And yeah, so like, how do you respond to the question if someone asks you, what are you currently making?
Yeah, so no, that's in most states. I'm going now based off of the US. In most states, they're not even allowed to ask you how much you currently make or what did you recently make. Even if they do, you could just say, rather than disclosing that, which I'm not comfortable with, and then so you could just say, thank you for asking that, rather than disclosing that, which I'm not comfortable with. I'm happy to share with you what I'm being considered for now, because that's all that matters anyway. And the other thing is, keep in mind that every single interview that you go on in for that company, each round is your opportunity to further increase your value. Right? So like if you just started your initial call with the recruiter, now he or she knows at least what's the range, and are we within range, or are you within range? That's great. The next round, you might meet with the hiring manager. Now, if you crush it with the hiring manager, he or she will want you to keep going. Why? Because they see that you would be a good fit. They see the value in you. Now, the subsequent round, you might meet with the team members or whomever, other stakeholders. And if you crush that round, they will see the value that you bring. And it just sort of compounds. So then when the offer finally comes, you've built up all this equity throughout the interview process. So if they did come back with an offer that's less than ideal, you should feel comfortable knowing that they actually want me. I've built up enough value. Let me ask for what I want now. So that's my response to that.
Yeah, yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Cool. The next question that we have from Mary Ann in the chat says a lot of climate work is done by nonprofits and NGOs with limited funds. What changes happen when you aren't in the tech/private sector? I know most of the
Yeah.
work that you do, Gaurav, is in big tech, but do you have any insights on like smaller companies or
Yeah.
nonprofits or anything like that?
And I think it's similar to what Hannah's asking with environments that have rigid compensation structures like universities, so basically education, and sometimes even healthcare has rigid compensation structures. And so, one, hopefully you just know that going into it, that you're going to have certain ceilings around your base salary. So then we go back to factoring in everything else. Is this a position that if I take it, will I learn so much that in 1 to 3 years I can go for a much bigger position? Am I going to gain an incredible network by working here? The other thing is too, can I negotiate title instead? So let's say it's a nonprofit and instead of giving you a senior manager title, they give you a director title. Even if the base is the same and they can't change any of the monetary components, but the title's better, well, then a year from now, 2 years from now, whenever you end up looking again, you're now negotiating from a director level instead of a senior manager level. So we're playing the long game here. But yes, I agree. In NGOs, university settings, etc., they have these caps and they can't really go outside of those caps, and it makes sense. So then we want to consider everything else too. You can also ask, I mean, we've seen people, we do, like Natalie said, primarily focus on tech. But we have had a few clients go to nonprofits. And another thing that nonprofits are almost happy to offer is stipends for certifications, or boot camps or something like that that allow you to then further your skills and add to your value.
Yeah. What about like, do you have any insights on specifically like startups? Like, is a better initiative to ask for more stock versus lower salary if that's kind of the cap? Any specific
Yeah,
insights for that?
that's a great question. I think for that one, it depends largely on the level or the stage of growth that startup is at. So if it's like a series A, a seed round, low, just starting out kind of thing, you can't expect a high base because they can't actually afford to give you a high base. But in that sense, you can certainly negotiate again title, maybe flexible work options like working from home, and certainly stock. Because at those levels, when the companies are at those levels or those stages earlier, they're happy to give out more equity than less, especially if they believe that you're going to help them scale and grow or be impactful to the work that they're doing. And then the later the stages, you have more flexibility on the base component, but you can still ask for sign on, you can ask for stock, stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. So it kind of seems like we answered Marianne, Hannah, and Camilla's question with this,
Mhm.
but maybe there's a little bit more insights we can add to Camilla's. She says, I'm based in Portugal and wages here are unbelievably low. How do you negotiate when that's the case? I understand the US is different, but you still have states with a higher cost of living than others. Again, I feel like we kind of answered this, but anything else that you'd add specifically to that question?
No, but one thing, you could ask yourself, Camila, is what else is important to you? And what am I trying to get 2 years from now, 3 years from now? And does this job that I'm about to take allow me to accelerate my growth of learning and earning? Because again, I get it. If the company can't pay you or there's rigid laws or whatever, that doesn't mean you won't make more 2 years from now, 3 years from now. And you think of it like this, like reverse engineering. The people who are making a lot now, they had to quote unquote eat dirt earlier on too. Like they had to take roles where they weren't making as much. However, the work that they did at those other companies allowed them to gain incredible skills and knowledge and networks. Plus, the story that you get to tell is really important. I joined this early stage startup when they were just sub 5 million in annual recurring revenue. And because of the processes, playbooks, things that we put together, the teams we built, we were able to help them grow 67% year over year or up to 25 million. That makes you so much more valuable 2 years from now. And so if you were taking a 100K role in that job and you were able to have that story, there's a good chance that the next role you get is not going to be 105. It'll be 130, 160, 170, depending on the company. So it's like, where am I going? And does this story accelerate my growth?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. And then also considering like growth too. And if that's a valuable thing to you, if you get in early, then you can usually grow quicker than the company. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
a really great point there.
There's this
Cool.
uh
Oh yeah.
there's this study that we did. I didn't do this. I'm not smart enough to do this one. But I learned this from a Harvard Business School professor many, many years ago. Um, he invited me to do a talk for their graduating class, and then after the talk, I said, I was like, I don't even know like why you hired me because you're Harvard Business School. Like, what do you guys teach here? And he showed me this study that spanned across 66 years called the Career Progression Life Cycle. And I'm going to share that with you real quick because I think it's really helpful. And what Harvard found was in the span of anyone's career in the workforce, there's only 3 stages you can actually hit. So stage one is what they consider, they called this learning. And in this stage, so the one of the data points they had was like at this is like usually when you're like 22 to like late 20s, early 30s. In this stage, you don't really care about your title. You don't really care about your pay. What you're more focused on is racking up as much good experience as you possibly can, and hopefully along the way, racking up some good accomplishments too. And then you go from that, you can leverage that to move to stage two, which they defined as earning. So now think of this as like early 30s, mid, late-ish 30s. And now in this stage, you are capitalizing on everything you just spent the last X amount of years learning. And it's typically in this stage that you break into leadership if you want it, and cap out right around the mid stages of leadership. But you can't get to this stage without stage one. It's really hard. And then the final stage, so think of this as like mid to late 30s ish to like onwards, is what they define. Stage three is what they defined as steering, like you're steering a boat. And in this stage, you are now actually helping a company move in the direction that aligns with its mission, its vision. And typically this is when you start breaking into senior leadership and executive level roles. But what the whole interesting part about that is you need each stage to get you to the next stage. And so again, like when we are looking at opportunities, it's really important to ask ourselves, well, what stage of my career am I in? And can I, at this stage, maybe take something that's slightly lower if I'm potentially in stage one and use it as an opportunity to learn as much as I possibly can and hopefully rack up some good skills and accomplishments. And then I know that I will be able to leverage this to finally move to stage two and then break into the bigger roles and the bigger opportunities where I can make a bigger impact. Um, and this framework ties in really closely with another one called small fish, big ocean versus big fish, small pond. And it kind of ties into what Hardward is talking about is when you are earlier in your career, it benefits you in most cases, not always, to just be a small fish in a big ocean. Like go and work for some companies that are slightly bigger than startups because you are going to work with incredibly talented people. And what you're able to learn from them is you would not likely get at a very early stage startup. And also, you're going to learn how to get really good at your job. So your rate of growth goes really quick when you're a small fish at a big ocean. But as you start moving through those stages, it becomes, again, not always, it becomes more advantageous to start becoming the big fish in a small pond, where now you're working at smaller-ish companies, but you have the bigger title. Because now you have the team, the title, the pay, the equity, the bonus, the sign, like everything you wanted. Because you took the time to get really good, you built good relationships, you got, you just developed great skills, etc. So anyway, I think when we start the search, when we're looking, just be mindful of like what stage are you in?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really great point. Cool. We got lots of questions coming into the chat. Thanks, y'all, for all these great questions. But next we have from Tara says, what do you do in negotiating if you don't have other job interviews at the same time to leverage the offers? Feels hard to negotiate for non-senior level positions because jobs have several other willing candidates able to take the role for the pay that you won't. Do these strategies apply for people looking for non-senior positions?
They do apply, yeah. Um, but again, I think there's no black or white answer here. So if we have to factor in so much, right? Well, how's the market? Is it really competitive? If I don't take this job, how much longer is it going to take me to find the next one? Or do I have how long can I go, or how much runway do I have, financially speaking, to keep looking for the role that I want, that I feel like I should be in? Or is this an opportunity for me to come in at a slightly lower salary again, gain good experience, and then revisit when the market is better or less competitive, which it was not too long ago. It really was. Up until 2021, the market was really good. It's just the last few years that has been all this sort of like there's tons of people now flowing into the market because of layoffs, etc., which has made it harder to compete. But that doesn't mean you can't. It just you have to make sure we're considering the market, our financial situation, what we're looking for. But yes, it certainly applies. And again, it doesn't that this is why like the options become increasingly important because it might not just be about salary. It might be title, it might be sign on, it might be something else um, that you can negotiate with them.
Yeah, and certainly timing too. Like you
And
said,
timing.
when people send that email, they already got the offer and you're being super respectful of this is my number one choice, but here are some things I'm considering. So yeah, all of that definitely makes sense.
Agreed.
Cool. Jessica says, any tips for filling in a salary number on applications when they don't allow a range and want a specific number in that box?
Yes. Okay. So in our program, people here know this. We we don't focus on applying to jobs that much. I mean, it's literally less than 5% of like where we spend our time, and we spend more time reaching out directly to hiring managers, executives, etc. And by the way, the resource Natalie's going to send you will walk you through that on like how we reach out to executives, how we find them, what we say to them, etc. But if you are applying to a job, I know they ask for a salary range. We just tell our clients to literally put $0, write the word negotiable, or write the word NA, like not applicable. So this thing right here, watch if I can share it real quick. We wrote this, I think in December or something like that.
I just dropped the link to it too. So that's what y'all
Yeah.
should see.
Can you guys see this here going up and down? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So this
Yep.
is called the feel good career. And the whole purpose of this title was we just want you to feel good about your career. So each one of these chapters breaks down, like chapter 2, how do you actually define what roles to go after? What are some of the things you should be considering? This is the home appraisal thing we talked about, but we really we talk about how you can execute it. So how do you actually conduct that audit or that appraisal? We kind of walk you through it. Then once you find the job to go after, well, how do you write a compelling LinkedIn profile that's going to convert to interviews? And so we have tons of examples here and things like that of like all the components to include in your LinkedIn. And then what about your resume? Well, your resume and your LinkedIn should look the same, but how do you write it? Well, I don't want you to even have to start from scratch. So you can click this thing up here called pre-written resume templates. And we already wrote a ton of different resumes templates that you can find. So for program managers, project managers, software engineers, brand marketing, etc. So these are templates that we found that work in our program that just convert to interviews. And so you have that. And then going back to what I was just saying is we teach you how to reach out directly to executives, hiring managers, recruiters, so you don't have to spend time applying. And so there's 5 sort of like different buckets or ways to get interviews without applying. And so I break them down here, and we literally provide the exact scripts on what you should say and like how you find them and how do you follow up and why some approaches are better than others, etc. And then how do you interview and how do you negotiate your salary? All of that templates and resources is like literally in here, and it's free. So you guys, you're going to get that today or whenever this is sent out.
Yep. Yeah, I'll send that out later today and just dropped in the chat too if you want to
Oh, cool. Yeah.
click on it now. Don't have to wait till later today.
Yeah.
Cool. I think we have time for like 1 or 2 more questions and then we will have to wrap up. Time always
Yeah.
flies by, but Maya says, can you provide some information on how the companies decide on the offered range? Do they offer a lower range than they are willing to actually offer?
How do they decide?
Mhm.
I mean, most companies will actually do like what they call market intel and then try to look at like, well, what's a competitive-ish range to be able to offer for this position at this title based on this type of industry, etc. And then yes, they will 100% go lower than that when they're doing their salary negotiations too. But that doesn't mean anything. Just because they're going low, remember, they're going to start low, but we're going to start high, and then we're going to come and find a win-win. But that's how they find their salaries, and usually it's benefits and compensation. It's like the bigger companies have a team called benefits and compensation that go out and like find this information when they're creating and categorizing titles and pay and all that. I do have to run, so that we have to make this next one hopefully a shorter one.
Yeah, yeah. This one has 3 upvotes, so we will go with that one. But how does this, how does what you just explained apply to a career transition from one industry to another?
It actually works really well. I think that's a great question. I think that people, when they're making a transition, feel like now I got to start over, or I got to take a few steps back, or whatever it is, and I have to sacrifice pay to do it. That has nothing to do with it. Remember that when we're doing this audit, we are extracting the skills, the experiences, the accomplishments that we have gained up until now. And we are now making it aligned with what they need. So if the hiring managers, the recruiters who work at these companies that are considering you for these roles believe or understand how you can help them solve their problems through your unique set of experiences, strengths, accomplishments, then you don't have to take this decrease in salary by any means. Now, unless you're like somebody asked, unless you're going from tech into university or nonprofit, yes, obviously expect to take a lower salary, but in other cases, you won't have to. As long as you're finding a way to tell these people, hiring managers, companies, recruiters, that what I've done, what I've worked on, the problems I've solved is in direct alignment with what you need, the value should remain the same, if not higher.
Yeah, yeah, certainly. Cool. Well, yeah, we are unfortunately at time. We obviously did not have time to get to every question. So if we didn't get to your question, I'll take note of them. Feel free to add me and Gaurav on LinkedIn. We can continue these conversations offline. But thank you all so much for joining us, Gaurav. Thank you so much for these incredible insights. As I
Of
started
course.
off this conversation, I knew I was going to learn a lot, and I did as always. So I really appreciate you and all that you offered
Of course.
today.
Thank you for
Yeah, of
having me
course.
here, and thank you all for joining.
Sweet. And
This
Leonie
is
just dropped in the chat the link to next month's session. It will be on LinkedIn strategies with career coach Radhika Bhatt. We will talk about how to update your LinkedIn for climate. It'll be on September 11th this time, so register for that. Also going to drop a link to our calendar right now. You can subscribe to our calendar to get all of these upcoming sessions. And then lastly, if you would like to be personally invited to the future sessions, fill out that form and Leonie and I will invite you to all of those upcoming sessions. And yeah,
all right.
stay tuned for a follow-up email with this recording. And
Okay,
thanks
bye,
again for
everyone.
tuning in today. Bye.